right. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's John Gator coming to you live from town of Wellington, and look forward to the opportunity to talk with you guys today and to go over a few different things. So did want to start off, as always, just as a reminder that everything that I do share today is my personal opinion. I do not represent the Board of Trustees. I do not represent the town of Wellington. This is just something that I do as myself, as an opportunity just to share with you as the citizens some of the things that are going on in the town and that are upcoming. So look forward to the opportunity to chat with you guys a little bit today. Hopefully I did get the sound issue fixed from last week, so you should be able to hear me better today. Again, I do apologize for that. My 1.5-year-old had made adjustments to my sound setup that I did not know about until right before the stream started. So anyways, I do look forward to the opportunity to share with you guys and to cover some of the things that are going on. And so we will go ahead and get right into things. So the first thing that we're going to be covering today is doing a recap from the Board of Trustees meeting this last Tuesday. And so do want to just cover that for you guys. As always, if you do have any questions, please feel free to throw those in the chat and I'd be happy to answer those for you. All right, so the Board of Trustees meeting this last week for public comment. We did not have any public comment during the community participation portion. During the consent agenda, we approved the minute meetings from the prior two board meetings. And then the first action item that we had was going over the design and construction recommendations for the water treatment plant expansion. And so just to give a little bit of background on this, with our water treatment plant, that there's been a lot of questions from people is why aren't we working on this, or, you know, with the watering restrictions and everything that we've had going on. There's really been a lot of question about where we at with the water treatment plant, and this is something that the town has actually been working on for multiple years, and there were some issues that had come up with the previous design, and the prior Board of Trustees took the opportunity to have a design and engineering company come back in and take a look at the existing plans and to see, you know, were things appropriate or was there a better way that things could be done. And so that company did actually come back and say that there was a better way that things could be handled. And so this was us actually authorizing as the Board of Trustees to move forward with this new design for the water treatment plant update. So the good news with that is that was approved. So that process has now started with working with Jacobs as an engineer. So I am definitely looking forward to getting this project underway and seeing that come to fruition. A large part of that is going to be looking at what type of interim solutions we can utilize. Ideally, we're looking at about 2024 is the timeline that they're expecting that we'll be able to have the new plant online. If everything does work well, we're able to get things moved through the process. That's potentially we could even see it online as early as 2023. But in the interim, the plan is to actually work on putting together some interim solutions that we can utilize to help out with the summers of 2021 and 2022, and depending on how things go, potentially summer of 2023. Because when we look at the graph of the water use here in Wellington, is a lot of the demand that we see where it spikes and starts causing a problem comes in the summer months. It's the outdoor watering that really hits us hard. When we look at the winter months, we do have usage, but that usage that we're seeing from the indoor watering is not what's putting our plant near capacity. It's those summer months of June, July, August that are really hitting our capacity very hard. When we have those hotter months of the year, we have more of that outdoor water use going on. So that is part of the plan, is to look at some interim solutions that we can put together to try and have something in place to help to offset some of that pressure if we can. So I'm definitely excited to see that that was approved and just to see that process going on. And so hopefully we will see a great new water plant that will be coming out of this. So, and again, just keep your eyes open as that's coming, but that was approved by the board. That was the first item. The second and third items, while technically are separate items, they were somewhat combined. So the town purchased a property on Harrison Street. I want to say, I don't even know how many years ago. I want to say around a year ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, that the town did purchase a property on Harrison, and they were housing the town economic developer in that building. And there had been a discussion I believe it was early this year or late last year, about the possibility of moving the Wellington Chamber of Commerce as well as the Main Streets organization to move their admin offices into that same building. That at that time was only being utilized by the town's economic developer, and since they were all working towards those same goals, there was really a feeling that that would really help with just driving collaboration and to really help these three different organizations to work together. And so that decision had been made. Those two organizations did move into that property, and we really did start to see some of that great collaboration coming out of that. So it was really great to see just the town working alongside these organizations that serve the businesses, especially in the downtown Main Streets area, but really throughout all of Wellington, and really came out of that. And then earlier this year, the town did actually lose our economic developer. She moved on to a new position, and so we haven't had no one that has been in that space. And while we've been bringing on other staff, the town had reached a point where we're trying to figure out where do we put these staff that are now coming on to handle different areas such as communication. We do have an incoming town administrator, an incoming finance director, additional people in planning. So we have all these different employees that we're trying to figure out where do we put those employees. And part of the challenge was that we did have the property on Harrison, but with the two other organizations in there was room for maybe one additional town employee, but there really wasn't a lot of room. So we were looking at having to go out and potentially rent or purchase more space to be able to house town employees. And so the discussion was, do we continue to offer that space to these organizations, or does the town say that we need to reclaim that space to utilize that? And ultimately, that was the decision that was made by the Board of Trustees, was to reclaim that Harrison Street address to utilize for those space needs that we do have for our current town employees. I know that there was some discussion on whether we try to push things out as quickly as possible, or whether we try to give them some space and some time to make other arrangements. And so what was ultimately voted on by the board was that they would give the notice to those organizations to give them 45 days, but they would actually not give that notice until the 1st of October. So basically give them an extra month of time to help with preparations on getting things moved over. And then there was also discussion that the board may have a discussion that would probably be within the executive session to see, are there other areas that the board might be willing to look into that would be able to help these organizations with that move or transition. So as of right now, the only change is just rather than giving them 45 days notice, we, as the board, could give those organizations an additional 30 days of time to give them that time to find a new place for them to locate their offices. And I know one of the big resounding themes that came from the board and from both of these organizations is that they really do value the relationship that has been built over the last few months and that collaboration. And I know a lot of the concern was, will that be able to continue with not having that shared space? And really my hope is that that will continue. I know from my perspective as a member of the board, I would love to see that relationship continue to grow and to flourish. I don't see this as the town saying that we don't want these organizations to be part of that. It's just part of the responsibility of the board is to look at how we're spending taxpayer dollars and making sure that we are making the best financial use of the resources that we have. And in this point, it was, looking at trying to minimize the amount of extra space that we have to go out and purchase or rent to do that. So those were the next two items. So the board did vote to approve ending the memorandum of understanding with the Wellington Chamber of Commerce as well as with the Main Streets program regarding the rental of the Harrison facility or Harrison House. And so, as I mentioned, the notice for 45 days will be going out on the 1st of October, which would in effect take place in roughly middle of November timeframe that property would need to be available for town use. So those were items 3 and 4. There was a lot of discussion, and I really appreciate all of the members of the community who really took the time to come out and share with us the value they've seen from these organizations. It really is great for me as an elected official to hear the value that our citizens are seeing from these organizations. So I was very grateful to hear all of that, and for me to really say, okay, what can we do? How can we help? How can we find that balance between what we need to do, but at the same time make sure that we're supporting these organizations that are doing so much for our community? So I just want to thank both of those organizations for all the work that they've done here locally, but also those of you from the citizens that took the time to come out and share the value that you've seen from those organizations. It really does mean a lot. So those were items number 2 and 3. Item number 4 was the annexation agreement and development agreement for Poudre School District. That is once more being tabled to the next meeting. We're continuing to work through things with Poudre School District and getting things sorted out as far as what that's going to look like, which is part of the reason that it's been continually tabled and brought back. And so hopefully we will soon see that actually come to fruition and be able to see a final version of that agreement that can then be approved and get the last of those processes going with the Poudre School District to get that moving. And then we had the high service pumps replacement for the water treatment plant. So this was a purchase request from our town staff for some pumps at our water plant. And so basically they went out to bid, and it turns out only one company actually bid what we were requesting. And these were items that came out of budget categories that were already set up for that. So we got some information on that, and then that was also approved by the board. And then the next step was a water treatment plant, a sludge removal from the ponds. So this is just removing some of the sludge, I guess that's the technical term, that comes from the water treatment plant and goes on some of the ponds nearby. And so there was actually a presentation on removing that sludge from the ponds, and there were 2 companies that had bid on that. Again, that's a very specialized thing, so we ended up going with a company that would also remove the waste that comes out of that sludge, remove it from the facility, versus the other would just be stored on site. And so that was something that was good to see, that we're able to keep that site area clean, especially as we're looking at needs to expand in that. It's just better to keep that area cleaned up. So that was very good to see. And that again was something that was in the budget to be taken care of. And then for the reports, I don't believe we had any reports from the town attorney or town administrator. And then staff communications, we did have the treasurer's report, which was included by our interim finance director, who's really done a phenomenal job. And again, I do encourage everyone to take the time to go through and look at that. If you want to know kind of where the finances are for the town, you can actually take a look at that. And then for board reports, I did ask a couple of questions about water bills. There had been a lot of questions that I'd seen, a couple that had been addressed to me about why water bills had been up this year, and there was a combination of things that the town had found when they were doing things. Is one, they had seen in some cases that some of it had been just because the state put in place a requirement that you not shut off any water for those that are past due. They said in some of the cases that was actually past due water bills. They did say that there had been a lot of new sod that had been put in this year, and so that did drive a lot of the higher costs that they were seeing with the water bills. And then one of the other things that had been brought up was estimated water readings, and that was something that was done, I believe it was March and April, I believe, were the 2 months or one of those months. And so that was something this is the first time that it had been done, and they hope to never do it again. But that was done because of COVID. Again, back at that time, it was very unsure time as far as we didn't know what could you do, what couldn't do. We were trying to keep everyone home so that and safe, and that included our citizens as well as those that would have to go out and physically check the meters. So when we did have those estimated readings, that was the reasoning that was done. It was something that the town staff said that there were a lot of challenges that came with that, and really their hope is that we never have to do that again, because it really was not ideal. And so that was just I was very appreciative to our town staff on just getting some answers to some of the questions that had been brought to me. So with that, that's all I had on the agenda from this last week. If you have any questions, again, as always, please feel free to throw those into the chat, and I would be happy to answer those for you. And then I will be covering, the next thing I did want to go through with you guys is just some of the information from the water utility update, or the rates. I know there's been a lot of questions about this, and this is still ongoing. So just as a reminder, actually this last Monday, we did close the surveys coming in. That information is still available on the website where you can go and review all of this. I'm going to put the link for that into the chat. But if you just go to the town of Wellington, I know our website's a little bit confusing, but if you go to our town departments, so let me show you guys how to get there. Our town, you go to departments, and you go to the utility billing department, and then under there it's utility rate update. So you want our town utility billing, and then it'll have information on there. And then at the bottom left hand side there you can see utility rate update, and that's how you would navigate to get to that page. But that will take you to that information. Now, the things that are included on this page, again, if you did not get an opportunity to watch the virtual town hall rate increase, I would highly recommend that you do that. This link here should take you directly to the town's YouTube page where you can watch that. You can also just go to youtube.com and search for Town of Wellington. It should come up. And then that video, along with our Board of Trustees meetings, will be on there. So you can actually go review this. So if you haven't, I would highly recommend watching this. It really does a great job of answering a lot of questions. And then also here are the different presentations that have been given at various times to the board and to the public. And so you can see from the trustees meetings, I'm going to walk you guys through the virtual town hall presentation. It really did a great job of answering a lot of the questions as far as why are we looking at the rate increases that we're looking at and what's driving that. And then we also do have our frequently asked questions, where there are a lot of questions that people have asked. And actually, if you click view all, that will take you to this page here where you can see all of the questions that we have listed right now. So you can just click on the question and it will lay out for you what those answers were for those questions. So we're really trying to get to a place where once those questions are answered, we're going to have a consolidated place where we do keep those so that you can always go back and look and find that information versus struggling to know where is it at or where do I go. We're really trying to do a better job of keeping straight with everything that we have. So with that, let's get into the virtual town hall presentation, and I'll kind of give you guys a quick walkthrough on this. Again, I would highly recommend watching the video. I'm just going to give you some highlights. Mr. Sexton did a fantastic job of presenting this information and really explaining what was going on behind it. So let's go right into here. So this is just to give you an idea of what our water rates have done over the last 14 years. And so as you can see, there's been a few minor changes. Our rates in 2006, they did go up in 2007 to a little over $19, which is higher than what we're at now. And then they did drop back down, it looks like in 2010. They got dropped back down to $13, and they've slowly worked their way back up to $18, and they've been at that $18 mark since 2016. Okay, so as you can look over the last 14 years, our water rates have not seen a whole lot of change. They've gone up and down a little bit, but they've been pretty consistent in staying within that 15, for the most part, $15 to $18 for the base rate. So this is not the tiers, this is just the base rate. But then if we go down and we look here at the next page, or sorry, no, the next page is the tiers. And so you can also see kind of what the changes for the tiers have been over those same years. So again, we've gone from $3.50 on the high end with that highest tier, the tier 3, and that's gone up to just under $5, but again, it hasn't changed since 2016. And then the middle tier, again, just under $3 to just under $4. And then the lowest tier, tier 1, a little under $2.50 to a little over $3.50. And again, none of these rates have changed at all since 2016. And then you can see just here on that what those have looked like. And then we look at the cost of water. And this, as you can see here, has changed significantly. And we're just looking at since 2011. But as we look at the years here since 2011, we went up 113% in 2012. We went up 23% in 2013, 35% in 2014, 66% in 2015, 31% in 2016, 7% in 2017, and 93% in 2018. And we're projected down in 2019 with 23% down. There could be a lot of factors that had to do with that. I think a lot of the factors that we saw with 2019 is we had an incredibly long and an incredibly wet spring. So I know a lot of people, such as myself, didn't turn on their sprinklers until probably late July or August, simply because we had so much rain in June and July. So there was a lot less of a need for outdoor watering in 2019, and I think that really had a big impact on the amount of water we had to purchase. So I think that's why we see that dip in the pricing. And now I know that there have been a lot of concerns from citizens over the time that, and the conversations that I've had about the speed of development and all these new homes that we have coming in, and I totally understand those concerns. And I would have to look at the exact numbers, so I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but our rate of growth in Wellington is somewhere between 5 to 8 or max 10% growth that we've been seeing here, which is, in compared to a lot of communities, that is very high. But the thing that you understand, it would make sense if it was development that was driving the cost increases that we're seeing in the water, then it would make sense to see, growth rates of 7%, 20% might be a little high, but it's like, okay, I could kind of see that. But the problem is here is we're seeing growth of 100%, 35%, 60%, 30%, 93%. And so these are not issues that are just caused simply because the town has grown. There have been a lot of other things that are connected with that we've had to do. We're having to expand our water treatment plant. We're having to do a lot of other areas, but it's not simply that, because we have more people, now we're having to buy more water. There really are a lot of other things that go into that. And the biggest thing is the way that our purchase price for our water functions. And then, as you can see here, the estimated 2020 costs were estimating between 1.5 million and 2.3 million dollars. So you can see that doubles. So that's another 100% increase from 2019. If you look back to 2018, because remember we saw that drop in 2019 probably because of the wet year that we had. It's not quite as bad when you look at it that way from 900,000, but even if we see somewhere around 2 million, we're still looking at doubling over that last highest year that we had. So those are very significant numbers that we're seeing in terms of what it costs to purchase water. And the thing to keep in mind is with these numbers, these have nothing to do with the water plant. These have nothing to do with getting water to homes, paying employees. These are simply what it costs the town to purchase water that can be delivered. So just something for you guys to keep in mind with that. And then this is to give you an idea of the water fund operations. And so as you can see, since 2013, our water fund has repeatedly operated a loss. So you can see it ranges as how much of a loss, but you can see in 2013, it was at a loss of $186,000, at 2014, $370,000, 2015, $250,000, 2016, $413,000, 2017, $765,000, 2018, $1,008,000, and 2019, $975,000. Now, 2020 will be the first year that we've actually had to pay for the loan that was taken out to build a new water plant. So we did take out a loan, believe the number is $26 million to pay for this new water plant. So the good news is we have the money to pay for the plant. The bad news is because of delays in design and things like that, we don't have the plant yet, and we have to start paying on the loan. So that's a bond that was put out. So within that, we're looking at a loss of between $2 million and $3 million for 2020. So that's a huge number. And you can just see kind of that spike where it's been mostly a downward trend of us losing money. And this is not, the thing to keep in mind is this is not the expenses of the water fund. This is when you take all the money that is paid in rates, you take everything that is spent in the water fund, and then you put those together, what are we left with? And that number should equal just about zero. The water fund is not supposed to make money for the town, but at the same time, it is supposed to be self-sustaining. So basically, you should see roughly, it's 20,000 plus one year, 30,000 minus the next year, and 25,000 plus, and then 10,000 minus. So it should roughly stay right around that zero number. Always maybe a little over, a little under, but right around that zero. But we're talking about huge numbers here of hundreds of thousands of dollars of loss. And as you see here, it's not just staying consistent at one line, it's consistently going down and getting worse. And that's the concern. Now, I know there have been some questions as to what drives that. Well, part of that is that our agreement that we have is based off of the price of North Poudre Irrigation Company shares. So our water is directly tied to the value of the shares of water, which those have been going up incredibly, incredibly high. All right, so if we look here, this shows just the consumption and the percentage of change. So you can see here how much water was consumed. So 2013 to 2014, we had 19% increase. 2014 to 2015, 8% increase. 15 to 16, 1% decrease. 16 to 17, 2% increase. 17 to 18, we did see a large increase of 33%. 18 to 19, 25% decrease. And then we're expecting in 2020 to see a 24 to 65% increase. So we are looking at a big increase here, but I want you to take a look at these numbers here. 19, 8, 1, 2, 33, which is big, minus 25, and then 24 to 65. And then I want to come back up here and look at these numbers. 113, 23, 35, 30, 66, 31, 7, 93, and negative 23%. And we're looking at probably another 100%. So there's a huge difference in the increase percentage-wise of our costs versus the percentage increase that we saw in water consumption. So it wasn't just simply that we had to purchase more water that drove this price up. It really had to do with the mechanics of how those prices are being determined. This gives you an idea of the change that's happened in North Poudre stock. So you can see here just the increase that's gone up. So 26%, 13%, no real change here in 2016, 1% change in 2017, 21% in 2018, 28% in 2019, and estimated about 53% in 2020. So again, this is what drives our cost of water is based on what these numbers ride at. So as these numbers continue to go up, the price of our water goes up significantly. All right, and then this gives you an idea of capital impact fees for capital improvements. And then this gives you an idea, if you want to look through it, some of the different ways that that money is being used in projects. And then this is the graph that was provided to the Board of Trustees at the beginning of this year by our consultants who went out and did the research to find out what is this going to look like with your water rates. And so this is basically if we did absolutely nothing, what things would look like. So this blue line that you see here, that's our total fund balance, including reserves. This blue line at the bottom here, that's your surplus or deficit. Are we making money being over zero? Are we losing money being below zero? And this red line here is a total reserve policy requirement. So this is basically what we are required by reserve policy to have in our account at all times to make sure that we continue to be able to provide services to our citizens and to our customers, as well as part of what determines the town's ability to do financial things, such as taking out a loan to be able to borrow to build that water plant. Now, the thing to keep in mind here is you'll see that this number here that is in the fund goes negative in 2022. So it goes from about 8 million in 2019, drops to about 4 million in 2020. 2021, it's under $2 million. The next page will show that. And then by 2022, the fund is insolvent. And if that continues, you'll start to see where the town is losing $8 million just in the water fund. And so as you look at this, and I know people are concerned, it is not sustainable. And the problem is I know people have said, well, let's just wait. And the problem is if we wait somewhere between here and here, so 2021, 2022, the state of Colorado will come in and they will do their own rate study and they will force a change to be done. And they will not ask the opinion of the public or the town, and we will lose the ability to set our own destiny as far as how this looks. So I think that's why it's been vitally important for the board to get feedback from the citizens. Is we're trying to figure out how can we incorporate that to make this work as best as we can, but at the same time making sure that we are the ones who are controlling the direction that our town goes, not ceding that control over to the state. So this is something that's just, I think this was powerful for me the first time I saw this. And if we look here on the next page, you can see here the big numbers you need to look at is end fund balance down here. End of 2019, 8 million. End of 2020, 4 million. End of 2021, 1.5 million. End of 2022, minus 1.5 million. And these are scary numbers right here to see that we have to subsidize that money from somewhere. If the water fund is losing $1.5 million, that money has to come from somewhere else, which means it gets pulled out of other funds, which now means other funds begin to go insolvent because we don't have funds sitting around with just, $1.5 million, $3.5 million, $5.5 million waiting to be spent to bail out the water fund. And so that's why we're looking at drastic changes, because unfortunately we're not at a point where we can wait 6 months to 2 years or do a gradual change. It has to be a massive change because we already had almost $4 million loss from last year to this year, and we're looking at about a $3 million loss from this year to next year if we change nothing. And so we have to get some way to get in control of that. All right, and then this slide just explains the differences if we make a change in the fourth quarter versus waiting until 2021 to make a difference, and it explains with the different scenarios what that looks like, so you can look through that. Just to kind of give you an idea of the scenarios, this walks you through each of them. So you can see here, this maintains our fund balance, but it does see, scenario one does see a large rate hike at the beginning of 2021. It goes from, so we would maintain the $18 until 2021. Then in 2021, you would see an increase of about 297%, up to $74.94. And then from there, you would gradually see that base rate drop down year after year until it gets down to about $51.34 in 2025. So that would get things from the loss that we see here in 2020, spring things back up to getting positive, and then it would just keep things balanced because we're already near the fund reserve policy. It would get us up to that policy, and then it would just keep us at that level, so we wouldn't drop below it. So that was scenario number one. Scenario number two would have a change the base rates to $35 in the last quarter of 2020. So that would be about an 86% increase. And then on the side here, you can see a total bill for 7,000 gallons. So you can kind of get an idea of where you would fall on that. And then in 2021, you would see an increase of another 100% to $69. And then you would see one last increase of 1% to $70.68. And then it would then drop down to $50, $55, $53, $53. So you'd see that drop down and then stabilize around $53. So again, you see it get us going up a little bit sooner, so we're not seeing as much of a loss in 2020. It gets us back up to that level, and then it just begins to level off and hold steady. Scenario number three, and this is the staff's recommendation of how we do things, is that we see a increase in this quarter up to $60 base rate. That's about a 218% change. And then we see a 3% increase to 61, and then we see an 18% increase to 73, and then we see those numbers drop down to 55 and then to 53. So again, you see that get us back up. So we have less of a loss in 2020, and then we get up to things in 2021, and then we stay within that fund balance reserve policy as needed. And then the pros and cons, and this just kind of gives you an idea of each of the scenarios. What are the good things? What are the challenges that are associated with each scenario? So with scenario one, it keeps things the same for 2020. And then after the initial 297% increase, you can expect a decrease in water rates moving forward. And it does help us to maintain that fund balance policy. The bad part about that is we do see a 297% increase in 2021. And it is the largest base rate increases of all of the scenarios that we have. Scenario number two is a step-like structure. The user's max base rate will be the least of all scenarios. So the highest your base rate will ever go will be the least of all of them, which is $4.26 less than scenario number one with the 7068. This does help us maintain the fund balance policy. And then the bad things is the users will experience 3 years of rate increases, and 2 of those rate increases will be 100% increases. So it'll basically double twice. So that is one of the downsides to that, is we do see a continual upping of that water rate. Option number 3, the staff does feel that this is the best option for us to pursue. After the initial increase, we do have less drastic increases of 3% and 18%. So while there are still increases, they're much smaller. And then the users are less impacted by the second rate increase of 3%. So you don't see back-to-back high-level increases. We have one increase that's really high, and then we're able to follow it up with a very small increase, which will be a lot easier for people to manage. And then it does also maintain the fund balance policy. The downside of that is the second largest base rate increase of all the scenarios. So it is, as it says there, it still gets that very high number. So I would, again, highly recommend that you guys look through these scenarios, get an idea with them. The surveys, those have been collected, those are going to be coming back to the Board of Trustees, and then we will be working with staff as we try to finalize and figure out what adjustments do we need to make, what can we do, are there any ideas that have come up that we haven't considered that we could bring into this. And so would really appreciate you guys' comments on that. Let me go through here. The wastewater and stormwater, we're not those are in here. Those are much smaller increases compared to what we're looking at with the others. So definitely look into those. But those are definitely not going to be as concerning as we're going to see with the water rates. And then here I would look at the August 24th. So the survey is closed. On the 8th of September, the staff will be sharing the results of the community outreach efforts with the board and with the public. And then the board is scheduled to approve utility rates on the 22nd of September. So on the 8th of September will be our meeting where we have the opportunity to review the information from the public. And then we will have a work session that in between Tuesday, between the 8th and the 22nd. I imagine we'll be sitting down with staff at that work session to kind of work through some of the details and things that we figured out to figure out, okay, what is the best way that we think is to go about this, taking into effect. Then on the 22nd, there will be another opportunity for public to share their thoughts and opinions. If you have not had that opportunity, I recommend you take advantage of that. And then ideally the board will be finally approving those, whatever rate increase is going to go forward will come to the board for approval. Obviously the board may not approve it. They may or may not. That I can't tell you what's going to happen. But then if those rates are approved, they will go into effect on the 1st of October, depending on the scenario. So as you saw, some of those scenarios have rates taking effect in 2021. So if the board chooses to go with one of those scenarios, then obviously those changes would take place in 2021. If they opt to go with the scenario where those changes take place in 2020, then that would show up starting on the 1st of October. So with that, if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer those, whether it be on water or anything else. If you have any questions, please go ahead and throw those into the chat as I'm actually getting ready to close things down here. But I just hope that this is helpful for you guys to get a little bit of an idea of what we're going through and what has led to us getting to that situation. Because I know for a lot of people, they're just trying to understand, you know, what happened, how did we get here? And again, as you have questions, if you asked a question that we said would be answered, those are hopefully on that frequently asked question page. So I would highly recommend that you go and check that out. If there are questions you may have asked that you haven't seen answers to, those hopefully will be on there. If you still don't see those answers, please reach out to either myself, any other member of the board, or to a member of the staff to ask those questions, and we'll make sure that we can get those answered for you. One last thing, just as a reminder, we are currently going through a comprehensive plan and land use update. This was actually brought up in our last board meeting. A couple of citizens had asked about this. We are actually working on a comprehensive plan right now that has to do specifically with how do we set up, what's our growth plan, and what's that going to look like. So I would highly recommend that you take the time to get involved. If you are active on Facebook and connected to the town, hopefully you will have seen these on the town Facebook. But there are different polls that have been ongoing, that have been coming in with gathering information from our citizens. So I would highly recommend keeping your eyes open, take part in that. I know that there were some stakeholder interviews that happened early on in the year. Unfortunately, some of that changed with COVID. So we weren't able to continue to do that at the same level, but I know that we do have a steering committee that's working very hard with our town staff as well as with our consultants on making sure that we get this comprehensive plan put together, as well as looking at some of our land use code and getting things up to date and helping them to make more sense. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up here. Hopefully this is helpful for you guys, and I look forward to the opportunity to chat with you this next week. There is no board meeting this coming Tuesday, so I will look forward to talking with you guys next Sunday. Have a great rest of the day.